Beneath the lakes you've been swimming in, beneath the waters you drive past every day, lie entire black towns. Real places, real people, entire communities drowned into silence. A beat. But the question nobody asks is why. Why were these towns chosen? Why were they erased? And why are so many of them missing from the record books? If you're new here, you're about to learn why so many Americans have never been told this story. Make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to hear is the part of American history they tried their hardest to bury. Water is supposed to give life, but in America, water has also been used to bury it. Across the United States, from Georgia to Alabama to the Carolinas, there are lakes that cover more than just fish and forgotten tree stumps. They cover stories of black communities that thrived after emancipation, only to be wiped out, flooded, or condemned in decisions that still raise difficult questions today. Not accidental flooding, not natural disaster, but intentional drowning. Some towns were purchased, others were forced into selling. Some were pushed out by mobs, others by laws. Some disappeared without a single page of documentation explaining why their land was submerged. But all of them share something in common. They were black. They were rising. And then they were gone. Today, we pull them back into the light. Oscarville, Georgia. To the average visitor, Lake Lanier is a place to swim, fish, party, and ride jet skis. But beneath its surface lies one of America's most mysterious erased stories. Oscarville wasn't a ghost town. It wasn't a failing town. And it wasn't abandoned. It was a thriving black community with landowning farmers, teachers, businesses, churches, newly built homes, multi-generational families. A place where black prosperity wasn't a dream. It was daily life. So what happened? The official record says Oscarville was depopulated due to reservoir construction. But historians know that's only half the truth, because before the water came, something else happened. A wave of racial terror that drove families out, leaving homes, churches, graveyards, everything behind. The land was clear to people long before it was cleared for water. But the deeper mystery? There are almost no pictures left. No records explaining the exact town boundaries. No official mapping of what buildings were submerged. It's as if someone wanted the memory to dissolve. Even today, divers report seeing underwater structures, a schoolhouse, a church foundation, stone walls, rusted farming equipment. Oscarville didn't die naturally. It was erased, then drowned. And America moved on. Oscarville wasn't the only one. Across the map, the pattern repeats, quietly, consistently. 1. Seneca Village, New York. Buried without water, erased with dirt. Before Central Park, before the trees and running paths and iconic skyline views. There was Seneca Village, a black landowning community. Evicted, flattened, erased, not flooded, but buried under the idea of a public good. Its documentation disappeared for over 100 years until archaeologists rediscovered it. The silence wasn't accidental. 2. Kowaliga, Alabama. The Black Lake town lost to water. Kowaliga was built by a formerly enslaved man who became a wealthy entrepreneur. The town had a school, a hotel, a mill, a factory, unheard of success for a black community in the early 1900s. But then the government chose the town's exact location to build Lake Martin. Once again, no evacuation photographs, no detailed maps, almost no records explaining why that land, of all land, was chosen. Kowaliga didn't fade away. It was submerged intentionally. 3. Sunken, Alabama, a quiet place with a loud absence. Sunken was small, remote, peaceful, but growing until the state condemned the land for a reservoir project. The archives? Thin. The reports? Barely there. The town's memory? Almost gone. If not for a few surviving oral stories, Sunken would be nothing more than a forgotten rumor. For the peculiar case of Vanport, Oregon. Vanport wasn't black only, but it was one of the few places on the West Coast where black families could live during segregation-era housing discrimination. When a flood destroyed the town, officials claimed it was unavoidable, but survivors say the warnings came too late. Reports say the state debated whether Black Portland residents should return. Whether intentional or neglectful, the result was the same. A rising black community disappeared. So why were so many black towns selected for drowning, erasure, or destruction? There is no single explanation, but a pattern emerges, a pattern historians describe as too consistent to ignore. 1. Black land ownership threatened the status quo. After emancipation, land was power, and black families acquiring land threatened a system built on economic control. Removing land removes power. 2. Locations near water were valuable. Many black towns were built along rivers, for farmland, for trade, for community survival. But rivers also made perfect locations for hydroelectric dams, reservoirs, industrial water control projects. Urban planners made practical decisions, but those decisions almost always displaced the same people. 3. Political silence helped the erasure. Imagine losing your home, your land, your entire family history, and having nowhere to appeal. No political power, no media voice, no legal support. That silence was exploited, again and again and again. 4. Records went missing, too often to be coincidence. Maps lost, ownership deeds unfiled, census data incomplete, photos removed. Over and over, the documentary trail thins right when these towns vanish. For historians, the question is no longer, did these towns disappear? It's, how many more disappeared without any record at all? One reason this topic fascinates millions is simple. People have seen things. Divers at Lake Lanier report. Underwater grave markers. Stone church steps. Wooden structures still intact. Entire roadbeds. Trees still standing upright underwater. Local myths grow around these sightings. Ghost stories, curses, strange accidents. But beneath the superstition lies something real. Human memory trying to rise back to the surface. It is not ghosts people are sensing. It is history, forgotten, submerged, unburied by curiosity. Even when the water came, even when the records disappeared, even when the last family had to leave, some story survived. From generation to generation, whispered in kitchens, passed at reunions, preserved in old letters and fading photographs. A submerged church bell someone remembers hearing. A road someone remembers walking. A school someone remembers attending. A home someone remembers losing. These memories refuse to drown. And because they refuse to drown, neither will the truth. What if the flooding was never the full story? What if the water was just the final step in a broader pattern? Consider highway construction that cut through black neighborhoods nationwide. Urban renewal projects that displaced thousands of black families. Industrial zoning that placed factories in black communities. Government projects rerouting rivers straight through black properties. Flooding wasn't the only tool. It was simply one tool in a larger strategy of removal, a strategy never written, yet repeated so often became its own unwritten policy, a policy of erasure. There's a reason these stories are rising again, not unlike the structures beneath Lake Lanier. Because America cannot understand its present without acknowledging the land beneath its feet and beneath its waters. These were not accidents. They were not random. They were part of a long, hidden chapter in the story of Black America, a chapter that damaged generational wealth, family history, and community power. And now, people are finally asking the questions that were avoided for decades. If you stand by these lakes at sunrise, sometimes the water feels too still, too heavy, like it knows what it's hiding. Because water remembers, land remembers, and history, even drowned, eventually forces its way back. And if you think this story is haunting, wait until you hear what happened to the black towns that weren't drowned but burned or bulldozed or paved over. So if you want the truth, the full truth, subscribe. Because on this channel, the stories they buried will rise again.